Matty Fresh on the track up at State. And I'm bringing to you live my boys Alec and Nate. Tequila Ty, Jay, Nelly, and Zillin in the building. So kick it back, pour the drink. We chillin' because I'm boozing and betting and ballin' like I'm 2-6 in the blue kicks. Watch me move quick. Yeah, this the blueprint. So who's getting involved? Welcome into the show. This is Booze, Bets, and Ball, baby.
And unfortunately, welcome back to Booze, Bets, and Ball. Yeah, that went well. Yeah, Penn State lost 41-17. Look, I picked them to lose. I didn't think it was gonna be
you're
that
smart.
I didn't think it was gonna be that bad. Like, honestly, I was very surprised by how that went in the second half. But at the same time, I guess I wasn't, because that was something we kind of talked about was, if you're going to get Michigan, you have to get them early because they take over the second half in the same exact. That was the fourth straight Big Ten game where they just practically took over the second half.
That was horrible. Penn State came out the first drive of the second half, scored a field goal, right? Things looked kind of okay for a second, but it was 41-17, but it was way worse than that. I mean, that does not do it justice, right? Like the pick six was a great play by Curtis Jacobs, but if that doesn't bounce off PJ Mustafer's helmet, that's just an incomplete pass. And they would have punted. They would have forced Michigan to punt once for the day, but wow, that was just a dismantling in all things.
Yeah, even when they scored on that pick six, like, it still felt like they were losing, even though they had like a 14-13 lead. Like, just the way Michigan was methodically moving the ball and keeping Penn State. I mean, I'll bring this up. Like, the time of possession, that kind of stuff is just insane. Like, 42-18 is insane. Like, that's out of this world.
So that's insane. The play differential is insane, right?
Yeah.
The 28 there, or negative 28. So that's Penn State has actually won games with a bigger point differential play differential. Like Wisconsin last year was minus 44. Right? So, and Penn State still managed to win, but Wisconsin's offense was not that good, and like they managed to. Penn State shut down their run game more or less. Or I guess kind of. I'd have to go back and look, but it was 16-10, right? So they did not. But Michigan, Penn State had a lot of tackles missed behind the line, behind or at the line of scrimmage. Blake Corum is apparently, one of the best 2 or 3 running backs in the conference now, at least. So. And then Donovan Edwards too. You said they were moving methodically down the field, until their first drive of the second half when he broke off that 67-yard or whatever it was to score their first touchdown, and then after that there was just no looking back.
Yeah, I mean, once you get behind a team that runs the ball like that, it's just not going to go well. I was surprised maybe by the big plays from Michigan because I just thought that. If Carter and Jacobs have enough speed to get to these guys, and the secondary has decent speed, but they were just whiffing on everything. And I mean, look, the holes at the line of scrimmage were big, and it was bad, but they struggled to tackle against Purdue, and we kind of wrote that off as first game of the year. And then they looked pretty good the next 4 games, but this looked like they never tackled before. And I know Corum's a smaller guy, kind of, low center of gravity, pretty well built, hard to bring down, but like he was just pinballing off of them, and it was bad. It was bad to see. Like they did not look, and this goes back to the bye week thing because they came out pretty flat. They did not look prepared, and especially at the line of scrimmage. I mean, they got destroyed on both sides.
They did. Well, I mean, offensively, the run game was not good, but I mean, the pass protection for whatever 22 passes or whatever that Clifford had, or 29, I forget. I think it was 29 passes, 22 rushes, or the other way around. There wasn't a lot of pressure on him, right? It just the running game could never get going, and the defensive line, and there were no adjustments made whatsoever. It seemed like, I mean, maybe there were, but. Even Joel Klatt late in the game is pointing out how Penn State's got 5 guys in the box, and then Corum runs for 30 yards because you're blocking 4 guys, and then he makes the other guy miss. It was just really bad all around that way.
That's the thing I don't understand, because the staff spends all offseason and pretty much up until this point in the season talking about how great the secondary is.
Yeah.
And yet it's kind of like they don't trust them because they won't stack the box against
and play
these.
Man. Yeah.
They're so worried about getting beat on the big play through the air. And it's like, well, okay, if you have a first round pick in Porter at cornerback and you have another good cornerback in King, it's like, I thought you weren't worried about those things because you put together this great secondary. So why aren't you still putting 7-8 in the box against these run happy teams if you do trust those guys in the secondary? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Michigan defense accounted for 4 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Penn State had 7 tackles for loss on many more plays, obviously, and 1 sack. So the offensive line, like, I don't know, our running backs, like when they get hit behind the line or at the line, they go down, and the Michigan guys did not, right? It's kind of the difference there. But yeah, you're right. It just, there was a lot of zone, a lot of really far off zone too. The first drive Michigan had, there was a pass around midfield. I forget exactly, but it was a hitch, and there was nobody within 8 yards of the receiver. And like, that's kind of how it went the whole game, right? Like, I think a lot of people were talking about how if you want to beat Michigan, you want to make, and this was on the Saturday shows, like, you need to make JJ McCarthy beat you. Urban was making this point quite a bit. Penn State did absolutely zero to make JJ McCarthy beat them, right? Like, none of these things. And I don't know what you do differently. I'm not a multi-million-dollar paid coach, but I know it wasn't that. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more questions than answers, I think, that came out of this game, because quite frankly, I don't think anyone played good. Like, I can't really look at even a positional group that I thought was good, because really no one was. I mean, the receivers, it seemed like they struggled to get open at times too, like a lot of the time, and Clifford's just kind of dancing back there, waiting, and nothing was there. And, part of that too is I don't know what the plan is on offense, why, they knew Michigan had a pretty good D-line that was going to give the offensive line problems. And they did nothing to, like, alleviate that by throwing, like, screens or just slants or something quick. It seemed like every route they were going was like 10, 15 yards downfield, where it was just taking too long, and these guys were guarded and there was nowhere to go with the ball. Like, there was no emphasis on trying to just get the ball in, like, Parker Washington's hands or Tinsley's hands and just letting them make a play, like something quick. It was like everything was too drawn out, and it cost them. Like, and the same with the running backs too. Like, Singleton had 6 carries. All 6 of them he ran into a wall between the tackles. We know he's not the most, physical in between the tackles back. We know that's more Allen, and Allen might be a little better with his cuts and stuff. But he has incredible speed. So why aren't you throwing him swing passes or pitching it outside the tackles and just letting his speed be a difference? We tried to, first 5 games, we're like, okay, they're being bland. They're being bland on purpose. Like, they're going to come out with a game plan. And, at that point, I think it's clear now we were just kind of lying to ourselves, hoping that was the case. Like, I think that's just kind of what they are. Like, I don't know why they refuse to do some of those things and get those guys the ball faster, more often. It's just really confusing.
Yeah, and all that started with the very first drive on 3rd down. They had 3rd and 2 or whatever, 3rd and 1. Yeah. And they tried to run Singleton, I think, kind of off tackle or off guard, and he had to pop it outside, or try to, because there was no hole there, and then that just kind of set up the whole day, right? Like, maybe that's one where you want to see Kevon Lee, who is going to go forward and get what he can get. There was a lot of comment about that play too, that there was a huge hole over the left side of the center, where Clifford could have easily snuck it for a 1st down. So wonderful. But to your point, like last week, the Indiana game, at least in the first half, and again, Michigan does different things in the first and second half. That's all. They were marching down the field, just, screen to the left, screen to the right, screen to the left, screen to the right. And Michigan did not quite have the secondary to stop them. And it got the ball out quick, and it got people in space. Parker Washington is really good in space when he has the ball. So, yeah, just, I don't know. Maybe they didn't watch that game or something.
I guess, it also seems like they kind of got away from, if they did have a plan, the fact that they went 3-and-out on the first 2 drives. It seems like they just totally threw it out then, even though the game was relatively close then, up until the middle point of the third quarter, they just kind of went to this like air raid attack where they're like, we have to throw the ball downfield to get back in this game. And it's like, if you just stuck with what you thought you were going to do, and maybe that was like bubble screens and swing passes and stuff, it might have worked. And, you might have held on to the ball a little longer than 18 minutes and, scored and gave your defense a rest. I don't want to say that the offense going off the field so quick was the only reason that the defense gave up 418 rushing yards, because there's a lot that went into that too, like we talked about earlier, but it certainly didn't help. And I don't know. It's at the point where you start to question Yurcich a little bit. I mean, 17 points against Northwestern, technically 10 for the offense against Michigan. And it's just kind of like where are they going here? Because they don't look like they have a plan or an identity. Like
you wrote that again right today in VBR that we don't have an identity, and that was the same issue last year. So on Thursday or so, there will be for the bloggy different kind of offensive metrics from the last 15 years, like all the coordinators versus Yurcich and versus Shiraka. I don't know what they do good now, right? Like the longing for the days of Ricky Ronnie being the offensive coordinator is kind of where we're at right now, because it does not, there is no identity. There is nothing like there's a big improvement of 2022 thus far versus 2021, but like that's built on, except for this game and kind of the crap game at Northwestern, like it's built on a pretty weak schedule, right? That they played in Central Michigan, Ohio, and Purdue. So like, I don't know. We'll see how it evolves, but I would not be shocked if the 2022 offense ends up being no better than the 2021 offense was by the time they get through Minnesota and Ohio State and a couple of the other teams. Maryland's going to be pretty good too. So it's kind of crazy. I don't know. No identity, no real seemingly kind of true plan. And it looked good in the first couple of games with Singleton and Patron Allen kind of, again, chewing up really kind of not great offenses or defenses. So, I mean,
the two drives they scored was when they had 50-yard plays. They had the 62-yard run by Clifford and the 48-yard pass to Wallace, and it's like, so we talked about how they refused to kind of throw the ball downfield, and I know I just said the whole
air raid thing.
They didn't do it quick enough to try screens and stuff, and then I'm gonna say they didn't try the ball downfield. But the truth is, when they do those big plays every once in a while, it does seem to jumpstart their offense, because the truth is they just don't run the ball consistently enough to sustain these long drives, which they want to do.
That was a really good catch by Harrison Wallace, who had a drop in the end zone against Northwestern. Right? So good to see him. I think it was him good to see him come back. I know this off the top of my head because I had to calculate it a bunch of times, and like it makes me want to throw up every time. They got 40% of their offensive yards on 2 plays, which is like 4% of their plays or something like that, right? So that's really, really, really bad. There's just nothing that you're doing right besides getting lucky 4% of the time. You're not going to win any games like that. You're definitely not going to win the conference like that, right? And that's kind of a new thing. It wasn't like that so far the whole year, but if that is where they go from here, like Chuck and Hope, and you don't have Chris Godwin and Saeed Blacknall and Mike Gesicki, who we don't, and Saquon Barkley, like you're not going to win, right? It's just a disaster waiting to happen. So
yeah, it is. So that I guess that's enough about what happened maybe in the middle of the game. But I guess we have to get to the whole quarterback thing again, because it came up and Clifford ended up getting hurt. He took that shot when he ran out of the pocket on that third and 19 or whatever it was. And, he took a pretty good hit to the upper body. And I don't know if it was that play. I think it probably was, considering they kept talking about his shoulder or whatever. So Aller came in and played about 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. I think he was like 5 for 10 for 37 yards or something along those lines. Of course, the game was pretty much out of reach, but this game to me was not on Clifford, because as I just mentioned, the 2 times they scored was pretty much because he made plays. I don't think Aller's having that 62-yard run like Clifford had. I just don't. And it was just so weird because still on Twitter, it was the whole Aller when Penn State was getting smoked. And they gave up 418 rushing yards. Michigan didn't punt once. None of the receivers seemed to get open. The game plan on offense was ridiculous. And I really don't think in this instance who the quarterback was really would have made that big of a difference because it just looked like there was so many other things going wrong here. And I think in a way that's kind of concerning because I think we thought that Aller next year just comes in and like everything rises up a level. And then you watch a game like that and you're like, I'm not really sure if that's the case.
I agree. He wasn't winning that game. That much I know 100%, right? Like that losing by 24 points is not the quarterback who actually had a somewhat better day than the opposing quarterback, or at least very comparable to, right? Yeah. So that makes no difference. Going forward. Okay, so here, what do you do now? So let's say Clifford is kind of hurt, right? And not injured per se, but kind of hurt. Like, do you put Aller out there and let him get some experience, or do you play the old guy who, I don't know, like what is the difference in outcome that you're looking for the balance of this year? Right.
Yeah, if he's banged up, I would like to see Aller just because we saw banged up Clifford last year and it was not good because a reason what makes him effective is the fact that he moves well.
Yeah.
And if, there was that whole rumor with his knee thing a couple weeks ago and now the shoulder thing, like, I just don't think if these two injuries are real that he's going to move that well. And that kind of takes away what separates him from Aller right now is the fact that he can move and he can have a 62-yard run like that. And if that's not there, then, Aller's going to go through some growing pains, especially against a good defense like Minnesota. But I don't know. Like, I doubt they dress Clifford and then like keep him as plan B.
Oh, that's a disaster. Don't do that,
that's just not going to happen. So,
like, make the fans think that he's like really hurt, right? Like, put him in a shoulder brace or something like that. So that
they'd have to do that, and just that way, like all excuse, the staff is kind of absolved from any, wrongdoing or any, however you want to put that. But yeah, I think you maybe try Aller this week, and if you lose, then you go to Aller anyway because your season's over at 2. Conference losses, you're done. The best you could do is the Orange Bowl, I guess. So from that point,
you got to beat Ohio State to do that. So
right. So then I guess you're talking about like the Citrus Bowl or something like that. So I mean, but then at that point it doesn't matter. So it's kind of in a way a double-edged sword because if Aller wins, they might stick with them.
Yeah.
If they lose, then the season's pretty much over. So you go with them anyway. So I don't think there's a way if that happens where Clifford's back out there outside of maybe senior day. So
they're in between a rock and a hard place though. I agree.
Yeah.
But I think the choice is easy if Clifford is at all hurt.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot easier.
And like his knee thing or whatever, I mean, he had a 64-yard run or whatever, right? He got caught like by a really fast quarterback or a safety or whatever it was. So like, I think he looked like he moved pretty well now. I don't know which shoulder. He went out of bounds on the left side. So I think it must have been his right shoulder, which that could be a major issue.
Yeah. If it is that.
But man, like, I don't know. Like I agree with you that it is a catch-22 and you can really screw things up one way or the other, depending on what you do. But also, there's not after that game, there's not a lot of goodwill left in the fan base, I think, right? Because that was, for my money, that was the worst loss that they've had since at least 2016. So you got to do something, and you got to start giving people hope again because there is none right now.
Yeah. So we're gonna wind this down a couple minutes, but we just talked about with the worst losses, and the thing that's crazy to me is the last 3 times they've played at the Big House with fans.
Yeah.
The score's 132-34.
Yeah.
And the COVID team won there. The 2014 team, which was awful, lost by I think 5. I think it was 18-13 or something like that. And then so the 3 times that Franklin went there with a talented team that they were talented because let's be honest, they won 11 games, those or 9 and 11, those those 2 other years, like they were good teams. They've just been destroyed. And I'm trying to understand what the problem is that they don't match up with Michigan at all when they go to the big house. And then
the next year, they're going to beat them next year, right? Yeah,
they come to Michigan Michigan comes to Penn State, and Penn State like runs their own game. Like we saw Barkley run wild in 17, and then in 19, Clifford and Hamler couldn't miss. And then even last year, a really bad Penn State team should have won that game. So like it's just confusing to me. The difference of being on the road takes you from equal to above footing to when you go there, you play like UConn. Like I don't understand what that is. Like that makes zero sense.
But this one is the worst out of those 3, at least, because in 2016 they were missing all their linebackers, right? And they were not who they were going to be by the end of that year, right? There were still a lot of question marks about them. 2018, by that time, that was late in the season. Trace was really hurt, right? And they ended up playing. Which one? Tommy Stevens.
Right? He played. Yeah,
I get those 2 guys mixed up for like in what years they were here. This year, like they were undefeated, had a hell of a lot of momentum, and we think they are equally as talented in Michigan and got their doors blown off. Right? Yeah. Like this is the worst out of those easily. It's worse than any of the 2017, 2018 Ohio State games because at least those were competitive and they had a chance. Right? I would much rather lose close to a team that ends up in the playoff than get killed by a team that ends up in the playoff. What are other notable losses? Like the Rose Bowl. Okay. That was like one of the greatest games of all time. Probably should have won that one, but didn't. This is like rain delay Michigan State 2017, where, just like nothing really went right at the end. Still should have won that one too, though. So they had no business on the same field as Michigan last week.
No, so, it didn't look it.
I don't know. I'm sad, and
yeah,
I guess I'll watch the game this weekend, right? Because it's a night game and it's a whiteout. I don't know. Probably I will not like wear all white or anything, because I'm gonna be sitting in my house, so who cares? But like, oh god,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Coming off a bye under Franklin, they're now 3-7, which is ridiculous. They're 0-4 at the Big House in games that there's fans. And since beating Ohio State in the whiteout in 2016, they're 0-10 against teams in the top 10. So I don't know.
After their first loss of the season?
They've lost the last 4 years. They've lost, or no, not 2019. They came back. They beat Indiana.
Okay.
2017 consecutive losses. 2018 consecutive losses. 2020 consecutive losses, and last year consecutive losses.
Yep. So I am not feeling great about it. Okay, and Minnesota can do exactly the same things that Michigan did, and exactly the same things that Illinois did last year. So I know rushing yards don't score points. But like, if you're going to hold the ball for 40 plus minutes, when you're playing an opposing offense that doesn't really score at a super high rate, then it's a useful strategy to just run the hell out of the ball. So anyway, hey man, it's always good seeing you.
Yeah. No matter the circumstances, I guess. We'll be back later in the week with a little Minnesota preview, get more into that, talk about the whiteout and all that fun stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm going to be at the whiteout on Saturday and the Phillies play at the same exact time. So, I don't know what I'm going to bring a TV into the stadium, I guess, but I don't know what else to do. That's going to be a problem. All right. So
I'll give you my direct TV.
All right. Sounds good. I'm sorry if you watched this. I'm sorry you had to watch it. I mean, no one wanted to talk about this, but as always, thanks for watching.